Welcome you all today to the Free Market Roadshow 2014 in Athens. The Free Market Roadshow is organized by the Austrian Economic Center in cooperation with dozens of think tanks and an association with international partners like Liberty Fund, Students for Liberty, Hayek Institute, and more. It goes to almost 30 cities in Europe to defend and promote liberty and free markets. We're very proud to have this show here in Athens for the second year. Liberty Forum is the local organizer, this year here in the Law Library, and we thank Professor Hatsis for his contribution on this. Well, the show includes 3 panels. The speakers are distinguished. We're going to have very interesting presentations. And after the speeches, there's going to be a session with questions and answers. So, be free to ask both questions, engage with the speakers, and you won't regret it on this. Well, now, Mr. Gerhard Eisel from the Embassy of Austria will give us a few words, and then we start with the panels. First of all, you can see here the site. You can go online and vote, and it's a question about participating in the elections for the European Parliament later this year. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Austrian Ambassador Melita Schubert, I would also very heartily like to welcome you to this conference today. Unfortunately, the Ambassador cannot be with us today, as she is today in Yanina, where there's an important event remembering the Holocaust, when the whole Jewish population of Yanina was dispersed by the German Wehrmacht. But now coming to the future. For me, it's a great honor to welcome you to this Free Market Roadshow organized by the Austrian Economics Center. Especially I want to thank you very much, Dr. Kohn, for organizing this huge event covering 30 countries throughout of Europe. And it was very interesting to see up to Kiev, which I think is very actual for the moment. The topic of the Free Market Roadshow, the future of Europe at stake, European elections ahead, what's next for the Union, is of course an extremely actual topic. The elections will take place in 2 months, taking place now in 28 member states. So 400 million people elect their electorate. So I think it's very important what's said here is important to participate at these European elections. Because of course the Parliament has now a really important say on how Europe will develop, and I can assure you, just as a representative of a member state government, that especially when the latest negotiations with the Parliament on the SRM were really extremely difficult, because I mean it's very tough negotiations between the Council and the Parliament. But that's democracy. That's democracy which brings us together. And I fully agree. What's also the purpose of the conference, as it states here on the website, that Europe desperately needs reforms, and it mentions on the website of the roadshow education, finances, labor markets, regulation, national budgets, welfare spending, immigration, taxes, and so on and so on. And I think there are a lot of areas, not only in Austria, but I think in all countries, not only in Western Europe, but also worldwide, where reforms are necessary. And I think therefore your Free Market Roadshow is of extreme importance of bringing on this push forward for reforms. As a diplomat, of course, I'm allowed to comment on the situation of the recipient country where I am. So I thought I would more focus just quickly on my personal experience, because the spirit, the director of this conference is Friedrich von Hayek, and he has been my spiritual guide for 25 years. I've got also his book, which about 25 years ago is Ways to Serfdom, which has really served me as a guide and also in my work as a diplomat. And just to give a few examples, how Hayek and his ideas influenced my personal life. First of all, I choose business administration and economics as studies, where amongst others, Professor Walter, who is also a lecturer in the Free Market Roadshow, was one of my professors. Then I went on to the Joint European Commission, where I was in charge for state aid control. We all know, we understand that state aid, although it seems a simple solution that governments spend money and throw it out to companies, state aid control is necessary in order so that the free competition, the free market can develop. Otherwise, at the end, only those win who put more money in industries and economic sectors, which finally would not survive without taxpayers' money. Afterwards, I joined the foreign ministry. In between, I went to the College of Europe. That's the reason why I retired the College of Europe, where, of course, also the spirit of Hayek, which I think is also important for Europe, this cooperation amongst member states, this common, very difficult finding of solution, because democracy is difficult. It's not like a dictatorship where one guy, one person decides. Democracy is very difficult, and again, as I just told you, the example of SRM, to find a consensus among 28 member states and the European Parliament, and of course bringing together in the opinion of the population. That's a very difficult task, but Europe is worth it. And when I continue with my professional experience, guided by Hayek and by others, I was then in charge for EU coordination, which showed me daily the difficulty of European coordination, also on the national level, but also then bringing me here to Athens. What we also embassy, for example, here do is that we support, with our small means, we support social entrepreneurs and startups. Young Austrians who live in Greece or who are half Greeks, and I think it's very important to support this entrepreneurial spirit in Austria, in Greece, in the whole of Europe, so that we can bring together Europe forward. And this, I think, is also a small contribution which Hayek gives us on the way. I want to thank you very much and wish good luck to the conference.
Here in Greece, we have achieved a fiscal adjustment beyond any belief, but through mostly unorthodox ways. And in fact, we went through very difficult situations, but we still haven't learned how growth can be succeeded. We do not respect the individual, we don't support the individual, we haven't learned how to change our way of thinking. And I think this event is a great opportunity for Greece, for Athens, for all of us. It is a chance to think alternatively. I'm glad, as Dr. Hans Stein, Mr. Hans Stein, is the first keynote speaker of this evening. He is going to talk about the deregulation, yes, let me tell you exactly, yes, centralization in Europe. Speaking on air with Mrs. Barbara Colm, she said that we have spent as Europe about over 90 billion euros for EU regulation. In my opinion, more Europe is a solution, but what Europe? Mr. Stein?
Thank you very much. You already gave the answer to, or your answer to the question. It's a true pleasure to be here today with you as the Friedrich Naumann Foundation, a political foundation in Germany, is active in very many countries, in more than 70 countries worldwide. We are focusing for the last 2 years or so also on working together with liberal, open-minded, reform-oriented partners in Greece. And one of our very dear partners is KEFIM. And with KEFIM we also published a couple of nice books and articles that deplore the chances of a freer and opener society. So It's a true pleasure to be here with you today and to discuss the issue on the eve of the European elections. What kind of Europe do we need, as we see a lot of Eurosceptics all over Europe picking up, be they on the left side or on the far right. So is more Brussels the key to prosperity, or does a more decentralized Europe provide the better path for the future? Should the central authorities of the European Union be granted further regulatory authority, or should the member states, the nation states, have their say to a bigger degree? So the question, more centralism or more nationalism, regionalism, comes up before like almost every European election. But we should not forget that over the last decades, from the beginning of the establishment of the European Union, this more integrated Europe created an area of peace and freedom and overall prosperity within Europe. I mean, prosperity is hard to say when very many European countries, and especially Greece, are in a time of crisis. But if you compare the situation now with the situation like 50 years ago, and with the ups and downs, there is also a way where you can say that the standard of living or the standard of well-being has increased even in countries of crisis. And as I said, the Naumann Foundation is working worldwide, and very often we get visitors from abroad, from Latin America or from Asia or from Africa, and it's interesting to see their view on Europe. And we often ask the question, is Europe still a role model for your regions, for the policy in their continents? And then very often the answer is yes. Like not that long ago, I discussed with a politician from Myanmar who was imprisoned for more than 25 years. He hadn't lost his spirit for reform. And he told us, we can only have a good future if we cooperate in our region, that we find an integration in Asia, and the way that former enemies in Europe came together and formed an alliance within the Union is still a role model for us. Or not going that far away, have a look at what happened at the Euromaidan in the Ukraine. You saw the very many Ukraine flags, but almost the same amount of European flags. And it was the people who protested against the dictatorship of Yanukovych who were striving for more of the freedoms that we have established in Europe. So, as Europeans, we have and still are experiencing the great benefits that liberty brings. Free and peaceful interaction in a flourishing single market have brought us unparalleled wealth. Now, there are some who say that we should go back and have more responsible on the national level. There is even now a party in Germany that has been established, calling themselves the Alternative for Germany. And at the last party convention, they bluntly rejected any negotiations with the United States of America with regard to a common trade and investment area. If you start doing that, if you start closing borders again in Europe, then sooner or later we start up setting up borders again and maybe ending the customs union. And if you only have a look at the figures, if we had the average tariff that we are having with our friends in the United States of 4% on goods and services, that would cost German customers 25 billion euros a year. And it would harm German industry 30 billion a year, not to mention the sacrifices then for the workforce and the loss in jobs. So in times of rapid globalization, the EU helps to secure freedom, peace, and also well-being in Europe. But still, the process of integration is risky and for some also threatening. It's also true that there is a tendency to centralize policy making on the European level. And there is a multitude of examples where you can only shake your head because you do not understand why the European institutions are regulating or try to regulate everyday's life. But is the alternative more national solutions? Have a closer look at who is operating on the European level. Yes, there is the European Commission and there is the European Parliament that got more powers over the years. But in the end, the last decision maker is the European Council, and that is the member states. So there is almost no political decision on the European level without the consent of the member states. That means even taking like regulatory work prohibiting the traditional electric light bulb, that was a big project by the German Chancellor Angela Merkel and her environmental minister Sigmar Gabriel, who now is the Vice Chancellor. So it was the pressure of the member states in cooperation with industry to get rid of or to replace the electric light bulb. But these national politicians never appeared in public saying that it was their idea, but they gave all the blame when the people rejected. They gave all the blame to the European institutions, to Brussels, to that bureaucratic monster without taking their own responsibility. So I say my point is the member states already today play a major part in European decision making. And so when we criticize European decisions, we also have to criticize our representatives of the national level who are brokering these decisions in Brussels, but don't want to take the blame for the wrongdoing that they say. To secure that the European Union remains an attractive model inwards and outwards, we have to cope with considerable challenges. The causes of the euro crisis have to be combated effectively to make Europe more capable of action and to avert harm from its citizens. Europe has to organize itself in a way that maximizes the opportunities that globalization offers its citizens, and democratic principles have to be strengthened at all levels. The idea of a unified Europe capable of effective action has to be revitalized in the face of all these challenges. Europe once again has to be a union where that is organized according to the principles of democracy, the rule of law, and a social market economic environment with clear responsibilities and a clear supervision of the work of the institutions. I think that there are areas where we need, and that now comes to the question you asked in the title, where we even need more Europe. And that is with regard to external relations. What would Austria or Greece do with regard to what happened in the Ukraine, on the Crimea? We need a joint European approach to handle international affairs. But also take migration. We have a joint responsibility with regard to migration and asylum seekers. We cannot fight international crime as a single member state. Then we need the cooperation of all 28 member states. And we also have to deal with cross-border environmental pollution. So there are some regards where I think that Europe has to work more closely together. Another example that is popping up now is with regard to energy security and a common energy market. And there are chances for a lot of member states where solar industry may be better used, or wind industry in the northern part of Europe, but then we need the lines that can distribute the electricity that is produced in other parts of Europe. On the other hand, we also have to see that some of those who call themselves Euro-federalists may be wrong, that the richness of Europe is its cultural diversity that we have to take into account. It's this diversity that creates innovativeness, that creates competition, and that leads us to develop not only the best products and services in a competitive process, but where we can also find out what the best institutional setting is. And diversity requires subsidiarity, which means that that level should decide on the problem solving that is the best fittest. I mean, we do not discuss about the pocket money for our kids on the international or European level, but that has to be done and decided on by the parents and the family. So we need overall in Europe a decision-making process with maybe the rule of the thumb: small before large, private before the state, and local before central, and thus decide where to find what solution to a problem. And it also provides, the principle of subsidiarity also provides that the decision-making process has a strong bound to the citizens and a stronger accountability. So that's what we have to focus on. There are proposals on the table. There are proposals, for example, by the UK Prime Minister Cameron, but also by the Dutch Prime Minister and his government, where we should check, where we have to undertake an evaluation on what should be handled on the European level and what should be handled in a cooperative process by all member states. That's the big task after the European elections. And it's also the obligation for the national parliaments to follow closely what their governments are negotiating on the Brussels level. And maybe then say no in some fields where they think that a common European approach is not necessary. There is a recent proposal by a Dutch politician that is exactly claiming for a stronger role of and stronger cooperation of national parliaments and forming by that maybe a counterbalance to the European Parliament. That also needs to be discussed. So for kicking up the discussion, I think we need a new assessment of what should be done on what level, We need strong cooperation in some fields, so we need more Brussels, to answer your question, but we also need more subsidiarity. Overall, we need more responsibility and we need more freedom of choice all over Europe. And with that, I'm looking forward to an interesting discussion, and I think with these principles being established, we will also see a better future for the European Union. Thank you very much.